Atención, por favor. Antes de comenzar, les solicito poner en silencio los celulares. Muchas gracias. Muy buenas tardes. La Vicerrectoría Académica de la Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile les da la más cordial bienvenida a la Conferencia Magistral Cosmology, Creation and the Origins of the Universe, From the Big Bang to the Multiverse and Beyond, que dictará el distinguido profesor William Carroll. Saludamos a la autoridad que hoy nos acompaña, el vicerrector académico, señor Juan Larraín Correa, y especialmente saludamos a nuestro conferencista invitado, el doctor William Carroll, a los profesores, funcionarios y alumnos de nuestra universidad. Invitamos en primer lugar al profesor de la Facultad de Ciencias Biológicas, profesor Rafael Vicuña, quien presentará a nuestro conferencista.
Gracias, buenos días a todos. Señor vicerrector, profesor William Carroll, señores profesores y estudiantes. Vamos a hacer una presentación breve porque está supuesto que ustedes van a tener la ocasión de hacer preguntas al final de la conferencia y queremos privilegiar eso. Conocemos al profesor Carroll hace varios años, él ha visitado anteriormente nuestra universidad, estuvo aquí el año pasado gracias a un proyecto Templeton y ahí con el apoyo de la dirección superior se nos ocurrió la idea de que él postulara este nuevo programa que aprobó la rectoría y la vicerrectoría académica de profesores visitantes, así que entiendo que él es el primer profesor en esa categoría dentro de ese programa. Y hay todo un programa, valga la redundancia, de actividades para él durante su estadía que va a durar hasta mediados de octubre. El profesor William Carroll es Research Fellow en Teología, Filosofía y Ciencia en el Instituto de Aquino, Blackfriars, de la Universidad de Oxford. Hasta hace pocos meses fue además profesor de la Facultad de Teología y Religión de la misma universidad. Él es de formación historiador y se ha preocupado especialmente de la historia de la ciencia y de la relación de la ciencia con la filosofía y la religión. Su investigación y su docencia se han centrado en los siguientes temas: la recepción de la ciencia aristotélica en el Islam, judaísmo y cristianismo medievales, el desarrollo de la doctrina de la creación y el conflicto entre Galileo y la Inquisición. El profesor Carroll ha escrito extensamente sobre el modo en que las discusiones medievales acerca de la relación entre las ciencias naturales, la filosofía y la teología pueden ser útiles para abordar preguntas que surgen en áreas de la biología y la cosmología contemporáneas. Aparte de numerosos artículos y ensayos en revistas especializadas que han aparecido en un total de 12 idiomas diferentes, el profesor Carroll es autor de los siguientes libros: Aquinas on Creation, La creación y las ciencias naturales, actualidad de Santo Tomás de Aquino, que publicó nuestro sello editorial hace unos años, Galileo, Science and Faith, y por último, Creation and Science. Él, por cierto, ha dado numerosas conferencias, podría hablar mucho más sobre él, pero la idea entonces es que darle la ocasión a él que empiece cuanto antes su interesante conferencia. El título ya se ha anunciado, no tiene sentido que lo repita, y let's make sure that there will be enough time for questions. Okay. Okay, Bill, please.
Gracias. I have enough time for questions. I am here for 6 more weeks, so I can answer questions for a while. I apologize for not speaking in the language of Cervantes. I can speak Italian, but Spanish is another matter for me. And I am grateful for the translator today. I want to thank as well the rector and vice-rector and the faculties of philosophy and biology, and in particular Professor Vicuña for helping to organize my visit. As I said, I'm here for 6 more weeks, so I'm happy to meet people who want to meet me. Okay. There is a handout. We have some more copies here. The handout is pretty important because it contains text to which I will refer, and some of the material is reasonably difficult, not to mention that it's in English. In one of his many arguments for the existence of God, William Lane Craig offers the following apparently simple syllogism, a syllogism that appeals to many, perhaps many in this audience, who wish to conclude from the evidence of contemporary cosmology that there is a creator of the universe. As Roman numeral 1 on your handout. First, this is Craig's syllogism, whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause, that is, it is created. The argument described briefly in this syllogism leads us from Big Bang cosmology, which appears to affirm the universe has a beginning, to the conclusion that there must be a creator. An initial look at this syllogism will disclose many of the topics I should like to talk about today. Is it true, and if so, how do we know, that whatever begins to exist has a cause? Can things begin to exist without a cause? And of course, what do we mean by cause? Is the reverse true, that everything that has a cause must have a beginning of its existence? One contemporary cosmologist, Alexander Vilenkin, famous for developing an inflationary model of an expanding universe, claims that modern physics can describe the emergence of the universe as a physical process that does not require a cause. Vilenkin accepts the idea of a beginning to the universe, but denies that such a beginning needs a cause. I have a reference on Roman numeral number 2 to Vilenkin's position. The truth of the second premise in Craig's argument, that the universe has a beginning, involves the acceptance of traditional Big Bang cosmology. But it is not obvious that contemporary cosmology tells us that there is an absolute beginning to the universe. As we shall see, there is a lively debate among cosmologists as to what it means for the universe to begin, as well as whether or not the universe has a beginning. Indeed, about whether our universe is but one of an infinite number of universes. We need to examine the role philosophy plays, both in what causing the existence of the universe means, and in whether or not there is a beginning to time. We might also wish to ask what the relationship is between the conclusions of the natural sciences and philosophy about the causing of the universe, and further, what faith reveals about creation. Now, although I am skeptical of the challenges to traditional notions of cause found in the views of Alexander Vilenkin and others, nevertheless, I do not think that the argument William Lane Craig sets forth is true. And in the rest of my remarks, I will be showing you why I think this. Indeed, I will argue that cosmological theories of all types tell us nothing about whether or not the universe is created. Now, with that conclusion, we can all go up and leave, because the answer is that cosmology tells us nothing. Discussions about contemporary cosmological theories and the implications of such theories for traditional philosophical and theological claims that the universe is created are features of wide-ranging discussions about the relationship between science and religion. At the core of this discourse are fundamental confusions, not only about the implications of cosmological theories, but also about what the doctrine of creation entails. For example, whether or not to be created necessarily means to have a beginning. Now, surely the most famous cosmologist today is Stephen Hawking of Cambridge University. And I'd like to begin my remarks by quoting from his book, The Grand Design, which he wrote with Leonard Mlodinow. This is Roman numeral 3 on your handout. Spontaneous creation is the reason there is something rather than nothing, why the universe exists, why we exist. It is not necessary to invoke God to set the universe going. The fundamental point is that there is no need for a creator, since science offers a more compelling account of the origin of the universe than does any appeal to a creator. Using insights from quantum mechanics, Hawking and Blondel think that space and energy, the primary components of the universe, were, as they say, spontaneously created out of nothing. Note already that they speak of creation and creator, if only to dismiss the need to appeal to some external agent. Contemporary cosmology for them eliminates any need for a creator. Well, what can cosmologists tell us about the creation of the universe? An answer to this question requires us to be clear about the explanatory domains of the natural sciences, philosophy, and theology. It requires us as well to be clear as to what kind of beginning cosmology addresses. Theories concerning what happened before the Big Bang, as well as those which speak of an endless series of Big Bangs, are often attractive because they appear to deny a fundamental beginning to the universe and thus appear to make a creator irrelevant. Much of the discussion about the implications for creation based on developments in contemporary science, and in particular cosmology, the focus of my remarks, is part of a wider intellectual framework in which scientific developments have been used to support a kind of totalizing naturalism. This is the view that the universe and the processes within it need no explanation beyond the categories of the natural sciences. This is Stephen Hawking's point. The laws of nature explain all that need to be explained, including the origin of the universe itself. It is this broad topic, namely that the natural sciences have shown us that we do not need a creator, that I wish to explore in this talk. It is a claim ostensibly made on the basis of developments in science, but it is really a metaphysical judgment, frequently advanced without a sound philosophical foundation. Many of those who are in opposing camps about the philosophical and theological implications of contemporary cosmology tend to share similar views concerning creation and the origin of the universe. That is, those who think that cosmology shows us that there is a creator understand what it means to be a creator in essentially the same way as those who think that recent developments in cosmology eliminate the need for a creator. Historically, Big Bang cosmology, which affirms a singularity or starting point for our universe, a point beyond the categories of space and time and beyond the explanatory realm of physics, has been used to provide a kind of scientific confirmation for the traditional doctrine of creation. If there were a Big Bang, so this argument contends, then the universe began to be, and thus there must be a creator who caused the universe to begin to be. For Christians, the traditional reading of the book of Genesis, confirmed by the solemn pronouncement of the Fourth Lateran Council of 1215, is that the opening words of the Bible, in the beginning, mean that the universe is temporally finite. The world and time began to be as the result of God's creative word. But to speak of creation and the beginning of time as intimately connected, such that one necessarily entails the other, has often informed not only those who support creation, but also those who use new theories in cosmology to deny creation. If creation necessarily means that the universe has a beginning, then an eternal universe, one without a temporal beginning, could not be a created universe. Thus, those who embrace new cosmological theories, which propose an eternal series of Big Bangs, or a multiverse scenario, according to which our universe is but one in an infinite number of universes, they call into question the intelligibility of an absolute temporal beginning, and hence, so it is thought, they call into question the intelligibility of creation itself. Many cosmologists who now routinely speak of what happened before the Big Bang think that to reject some original Big Bang is to eliminate the need for a creator. They deny the need for a creator because they think that to be created must mean to have a temporal beginning. And it is precisely such an absolute beginning that they deny. Such a view of creation as requiring a temporal beginning is the same as that of those thinkers who use the idea of a primal Big Bang as evidence for a creator. In such a scenario, accepting or rejecting a creator is tied to accepting or explaining away an original Big Bang. This is a fundamental error which each side shares that I wish to examine further. In The Grand Design, Stephen Hawking and Leonard Mlodinow argue that just as the universe has no edge, so there is no boundary, no beginning to time. Therefore, to ask what happened before the beginning or even at the beginning would be meaningless. Roman numeral 5 on your handout from their book. In the early universe, when the universe was small enough to be governed by both general relativity and quantum theory, there were effectively 4 dimensions of space and none of time. That means that when we speak of the beginning of the universe, we are skirting the subtle issue that as we look backward toward the very early universe, time as we know it does not exist. We must accept that our usual ideas of space and time do not apply to the very early universe. That is beyond our experience, but not beyond our imagination. In a television interview, Hawking expanded on this analysis. Nothing caused the Big Bang, he said, because there is no time at any putative beginning. Since time does not exist, there can be no cause of the Big Bang. Hawking thinks that the relationship between cause and effect is essentially temporal. That is, that any cause must exist temporally before an effect of which it is the cause. His cosmology allows for no time in which a creator could exist prior to the supposed effect. No time, hence no causal sequence, therefore no creator. Hawking and Mlodinow tell us that the coming into existence of a great many universes out of nothing, quote, does not require the intervention of some supernatural being or God. Rather, these multiple universes arise naturally from physical law. Ultimate questions about the nature of existence, which have intrigued philosophers for millennia, are, so they claim, now the province of science, and philosophy is dead. The vice rector can save a lot of money by burying the dead faculty, philosophy. And then theology, if mentioned at all, is simply dismissed as irrelevant, another area of saving for the vice rector. The principal argument Hawking offers is that once we recognize that our universe is but one of an almost infinite number of universes, then we do not need a special explanation, a grand designer, for the very precise initial conditions which account for our life and our existence. As they say, this is number 6, Roman numeral 6, just as Darwin explained how the apparently miraculous design of living forms could appear without intervention by a supreme being, the multiverse concept can explain the fine-tuning of physical law without the need for a benevolent creator who made the universe for our benefit. But the grand designer rejected by Hawking is not the creator, at least not the creator which traditional philosophy and theology affirms. Now, as I've already noted, there are some scholars who have embraced traditional Big Bang cosmology as affirming an absolute beginning to the universe, and thus as providing scientific support for, if not actual confirmation of, the Genesis account of creation. The relationship between the temporal finitude of the universe and the conclusion that it is created can also be found in the work of the Jesuit theologian and cosmologist Robert Spitzer. In his recent book, New Proofs for the Existence of God, Spitzer claims that modern physics shows us that the past time of the universe is finite, and since the past is finite, it must have a beginning, therefore the universe must be created. There are two related arguments here, one philosophical, that claims that were the universe to have a beginning, there would have to be an actual infinity of past days and events, but such an actual infinity is impossible, therefore the universe has to have a beginning. The other argument concerns claims of some contemporary cosmologists about the beginning of an expanding universe. Spitzer finds Alexander Vilenkin's argument for a beginning of the universe to be compelling, but of course he rejects Vilenkin's claim that the beginning of the universe, what Vilenkin calls quantum tunneling from nothing, does not need a cause. And once again, the reference to Vilenkin is in number 2. In a way, the debate here is about whether or not cosmology discloses a beginning of the universe. Stephen Hawking denies the intelligibility of such a notion, and others argue for variations of an eternal universe. William Lane Craig and Robert Spitzer claim that cosmology does indeed point to a beginning. The debate framed in such terms about a beginning lead the exponents either to reject or to embrace the idea of creation. Despite fundamental differences as to what contemporary cosmology tells us, all these views tend to identify what it means for the universe to be created, with the universe as having a temporal beginning. This emphasis on beginnings, even with Vilenkin's variant that a beginning does not need a cause, this emphasis on beginnings is indicative of confusion about creation. I would call this the error of beginnings, which leads to the beginning of all sorts of errors. On your handout in Roman numeral 9, you will find 2 caveats to keep in mind as we proceed. One concerning the verb to create, the other distinguishing the theological and philosophical notions of creation from what are commonly called creation stories in Scripture. All the other texts in the handout in italics are my words, and I'm going to refer to them to help to emphasize the points I'm making. The alleged conflict between creation and science based on developments in cosmology is often the result of confusions about what creation is and what the explanatory extent of the natural sciences is. Now look at Roman numeral 11, my words. Creation, and you can take this home with you and ponder it if you want. Creation as a metaphysical and theological notion affirms that all that is, in whatever way or ways it is, depends upon God as cause. The natural sciences have as their subject the world of changing things, from subatomic particles to acorns to galaxies. Whenever there is a change, there must be something that changes. Whether these changes are biological or cosmological, without beginning or end, or temporally finite, they remain processes. Creation, on the other hand, is the radical causing of the whole existence of whatever exists. Creation is not a change. To cause completely something to exist is not to produce a change in something, is not to work on or with some existing material. When God's creative act is said to be out of nothing, what is meant is that God does not use anything in creating all that is. It does not mean that there is a change from nothing to something. Now, Roman numeral 11. Cosmology and all the other natural sciences offer accounts of change. They do not address the metaphysical and theological questions of creation. They do not speak to why there is something rather than nothing. It is a mistake to use arguments in the natural sciences to deny creation. This is precisely the mistake that Stephen Hawking and others make. Similarly, it is a mistake to appeal to cosmology as a confirmation of creation. Reason, as well as faith, can lead to knowledge of the Creator, but the path is in metaphysics, not in the natural sciences. Already in Europe in the 13th century, the groundwork was set for this fundamental understanding of creation and its relationship to the natural sciences. Working within the context of Aristotelian science and aided by the insights of Muslim and Jewish thinkers, as well as his Christian predecessors, Thomas Aquinas provided an understanding of creation and science which remains true. Now, astronomers often note that to look out at the heavens is to look back in time. Perhaps to look back in time to Thomas's discussion of creation and science will help us to look out more clearly and to avoid confusions about both what we are seeing and what the implications of contemporary science are. One of the great intellectual debates in the Middle Ages, in Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, involved the examination of arguments concerning whether or not the world is eternal. That is, whether or not the world had a beginning. It is a debate that in many ways anticipates controversies today concerning what cosmology tells us about the origin of the universe. The traditions of ancient science, especially that of Aristotle, inherited by medieval scholars, affirmed that indeed there is no beginning to the universe. Aristotle thought that there could be no first motion nor a first instant of time. The universe, he concluded, is eternal. Just as we have seen with debates in our own day, it seemed clear to many medieval thinkers that an affirmation of an eternal universe contradicted their belief that God created the world and that for the world to be created, it could not be eternal. However, from his earliest to his last writings on the subject, Thomas Aquinas maintained that it is possible for there to be an eternal, created universe. Thomas, adhering to traditional Christian doctrine, believed that the universe is not eternal, but he thought that God could have created a universe which is eternal. Although reason affirms the intelligibility of an eternal created universe, Thomas thought that reason alone leaves unresolved the question of whether or not the universe is eternal. The development by Thomas of an understanding of creation out of nothing, and in particular his understanding of the possibility of an eternal created universe, offers, I think, one of the best examples of Thomas's account of the relationship between faith and reason. Now look at Roman numeral 12. When speaking about the origin of the universe, understood as God's causing it to come into existence, Thomas observes that there are two complementary senses of creation out of nothing, one philosophical, the other theological. The philosophical sense means that God, with no material cause, makes all things to exist as beings that are radically different from himself and yet completely dependent upon his causality. This philosophical sense of creation has two essential elements. One, there is no material cause in creation, no stuff whatsoever out of which God makes the world. And two, the creature is completely dependent throughout its entire duration upon the constant causality of the Creator. This philosophical sense of creation is the sense in which creation out of nothing is a subject of metaphysics, concerning the complete dependence of all that is on God as cause of existence. Thomas thinks that human reason allows us to know this to be true. He's able to make this claim because of the distinction he draws between creation and change. As he wrote, Roman numeral 13, over and above the mode of becoming by which something comes to be through change or motion, there must be a mode of becoming or origin of things without any mutation or motion through the influx of being. Notice that Thomas distinguishes between the mode of becoming by which something comes to be through change or motion from the more fundamental sense of creation that he identifies as the influx of being. The latter, the influx of being, is the causing of existence as such. The as such is an important phrase. It helps us to recognize the difference between causing something to come to be or to exist in the ways in which, for example, animals produce offspring, and the causing of the actuality of whatever is as it is, in every way in which it is. And in speaking of the need for a cause of existence as such, Thomas is working within a rich Aristotelian understanding of cause, and especially of agent or efficient cause. Thomas broadens Aristotle's notion of agent cause to include the cause of being. He thinks that being itself needs a cause because there is an actuality, an active being that requires an explanation. Furthermore, Thomas thinks that cause and effect refer to an extramental relationship of dependency and ought not to be seen primarily in epistemological terms. Cause and effect are features of one and the same act, an act or series of acts that cannot involve an infinite regress, since they all exist together in a special unity. A common objection to Thomas's approach to creation is to argue that the natural sciences are fully competent to explain all that needs to be explained about nature and human nature, and to add the claim that existence itself is simply a brute fact that does not require any explanation or cause. Well, to know whether or not the natural sciences are fully competent to explain the world requires an engagement with the broader philosophical topic of what the sphere of competence of the natural sciences is. To claim that existence is a brute fact is to make a philosophical argument, not a scientific one, and a defective philosophical argument at that. Roman numeral 14. Creation is not primarily some distant event. Rather, it is the ongoing, complete causing of the existence of all that is. At this very moment, were God not causing all that is to exist, there would be nothing at all. Creation concerns, first of all, the origin of the universe, not its temporal beginning. It may very well be that the universe had a temporal beginning, but there is no contradiction in the notion of an eternal created universe. For were the universe to be without a beginning, it still would have an origin, it still would be created. This was precisely the position of Thomas Aquinas, who accepted as a matter of faith that the universe had a temporal beginning, but also defended the intelligibility of a universe created and eternal. The distinction Thomas draws between creation understood philosophically in the discipline of metaphysics and creation understood theologically allows him to defend the intelligibility of an eternal created universe. The philosophical understanding of creation tells us nothing about the temporality of the universe. Thomas also thought that neither science nor philosophy could know whether the universe had a beginning. He did think that metaphysics could show us that the universe is created, that is, that it has an origin. But he would have warned against those today, like William Lane Craig, who use Big Bang cosmology, for example, to conclude that the universe has a beginning and therefore must be created. Thomas was always alert to reject the use of bad arguments in support of what is believed. The singularity in traditional Big Bang cosmology may represent the beginning of the universe we observe, but we cannot conclude that it is the absolute beginning, the kind of beginning which would indicate creation. Experiments being performed at the Large Hadron Collider, that huge underground particle accelerator on the Swiss-French border, may bring us closer to what happened just after the Big Bang. They will tell us nothing about creation. The distance between minute fractions of a second after the Big Bang and creation is, in a sense, infinite. We do not get closer to creation by getting closer to the Big Bang. Furthermore, as some contemporary cosmologists recognize, there could very well be something before the Big Bang. Similarly, excitement about the recent discovery of gravitational waves, referred to as ripples in the fabric of space-time, has encouraged some to speculate that we may soon be able to see what happened at the moment the universe began. But for whatever beginning these gravitational waves might provide evidence, it is not the kind of absolute beginning central to the theological doctrine of creation. For the translator, let's skip the next paragraph in honor of Professor Vicuña. Despite the fascination that some scientists have with nothing, quantum tunneling out of nothing, as Vilenkin has it, lots of explanations of cosmology in terms of transitions from nothing to something. Despite the fascination that some scientists have with nothing, the fundamental question of why there is something rather than nothing is a metaphysical and theological question. And with respect to such a question, why is there something rather than nothing? The natural sciences necessarily have nothing to say. Simply stipulating that it is only the natural sciences that properly speak to the origin and evolution of the universe is a kind of summary dismissal of metaphysics and theology as legitimate areas of discourse. Look at Roman numeral 16. Those contemporary cosmological theories which employ a multiverse hypothesis or an infinite series of Big Bangs do not challenge the fundamental feature of what it means to be created, that is, the complete dependence upon God as cause of existence. An eternal universe would be no less dependent upon God than a universe which has a beginning of time. To be created out of nothing does not have to mean to begin to be such that a created universe could not be an eternal universe. For one who believes that the universe has a temporal beginning, any theory of an eternal universe would have to be rejected. But a believer should be able to distinguish between the question of the kind of universe God creates, that is, one with or without a temporal beginning, between the kind of universe God creates and the fact that whatever kind of universe there is, God is the creator. As I've already noted, it was the genius of Thomas Aquinas to distinguish between creation understood philosophically with no reference to temporality and creation understood theologically, which included the recognition that the universe does have an absolute temporal beginning. Throughout my comments, I've emphasized what it means to be created from a philosophical point of view, that is, based on reason alone, an analysis which is found in the discipline of metaphysics and speaks to the ultimate cause of existence. What faith informs a Christian as to what it means to be created includes all that philosophy discloses and adds much more. Not only that the created universe has a temporal beginning, but that creation is an act of divine love, and that the opening phrase of Genesis, in the beginning, also means in and through the second person of the Trinity. My purpose, however, in discussing the relation between the doctrine of creation and science is to emphasize a common starting point, human reason, not to appeal to revelation. No explanation of cosmological processes, nor biological change for that matter, regardless of how radically random or contingent such an explanation claims to be, no such explanation challenges the metaphysical account of creation, that is, of the dependence of the existence of all things upon God as cause. Nor do any cosmological arguments prove that the universe began to be and thus is created. One should avoid the error of thinking that scientific claims about the universe's having or not having a beginning tell us whether or not the universe is created. One should also avoid the error of thinking that we cannot know that the universe is created. Such knowledge is disclosed not in cosmology, but in philosophy. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. I hope I'm leaving time for almuerzo.
Agradecemos al doctor Carroll. Thank you very much. Tenemos un tiempo para preguntas. Si alguien desea formular una pregunta, por favor, levanta la mano. Luego se pone de pie, se presenta y formula una pregunta en forma breve y clara.
Breve y clara.
Decir que puede ser en español la pregunta.
Sí, sí, por supuesto. La pregunta puede ser en español.
Yes, although...
No sé si es la frecuencia. Un momento.
Good afternoon.
this is English. Okay.
Sebastián Ruiz, from doctorate in geography. My question is, in the view of Thomas Aquinas, is there something that is ontologically not created?
Is there something ontologically not created? Well, it depends on how you define God, right? So God is a something in a certain sense of something, but is not created. God is the uncaused cause of all that is. All things other than God, and even to speak of other than God is a problem because it tends to put God and other things on the same plane. But for Thomas Aquinas, all things which exist are created. In a certain sense, God doesn't exist, God just is. And by all things, Thomas would mean not just physical objects, but all immaterial and material things. The taste that you have in your mouth is created, else it would not be. It exists as the taste, and so forth. So being created is the characteristic of all things other than God. And then what comes under the category of all things? Well, that's a subject for philosophy and the natural sciences to examine.
¿Preguntas? Good afternoon. My name is Christian. I am a student of master degree in theology, and I want to know if there was a multiverse in where was humankind. It could be legitimate to think in another incarnation of the second person of the Trinity in those universe, or the one who happened in our universe reached the others multiverse.
Well,
thank you.
what are the implications of some cosmological theories, such as the multiverse, for certain features of Christian belief, such as the incarnation, salvation, original sin, so forth. And the answer is, I don't know. That's why I deal with the easy topic of creation. How to understand the salvific, how to understand the salvific act of God through the incarnation, what kind of reality it would have with respect to life in other universes. Well, our first task would be to confront those questions in a certain way when we have to. The notion of contemporary science, in biology in particular, and anthropology, presents some tough questions within our own universe about original sin, for example, about an original couple of Adam and Eve, for example. Those are difficult questions which biology raises. Multiverse theories, I would say that there is, first of all, an equivocation with the word universe. We say about many different universes. I would say there is only one universe. We can use the word multiverse to describe subsets within the one universe. But I would begin by arguing that there is one overarching cosmic reality. Traditionally, we call it the universe, but when people talk about multiverse, they're now using the word universe in a different sense, talking about a kind of subset. So I would say that the incarnation occurs in the one universe that there is. If we describe the one universe in its plurality called multiverses, there's still the incarnation is a unique event in the one universe that there is. So I think I would want to get rid of that equivocation. And then multiverse theory is popular among many cosmologists. In many ways, it's accepted for theological reasons, because people think that if you have a multiverse, you do away with the particular problem of fine-tuning of the original conditions, and therefore the need for a fine-tuner and so forth. So there are a lot of theological reasons that some cosmologists embrace the multiverse. But I've been rambling about to tell you. My first part is I don't know the answer, except that I would say we live in one universe, not many.
¿Preguntas?
Hi, my name is Francisco. I study engineering. Would you introduce us briefly how the eternity of the universe does not mean that God doesn't exist?
The discussion about an eternal universe and God's eternity was a very lively topic in the Middle Ages, a little bit less so today in ways, more sophisticated in the Middle Ages. An eternal universe, as understood, distinct from God's eternity, an eternal universe is a universe of temporal succession without beginning or without end. You might think of an eternal universe as this kind of horizontal realm of all sorts of activity. And this horizontal realm is the realm which the natural sciences study, of all the changes that take place, biologically, chemically, physically, so forth. This horizontal realm may or may not have a beginning. It may or may not have an end. Creation is the vertical dimension, which is the constant causing of the horizontal. The horizontal doesn't have to have a beginning in order to be caused to exist. The error is to think that to be caused to exist must mean to have a beginning. All right? And we could conceive of we could conceive of a universe without a beginning, but that doesn't mean it doesn't have a cause. We could conceive, what was your first name?
Francisco.
Francisco. Francisco, when you go to Viña del Mar, and you go to the beaches of Viña del Mar, let us assume that the beautiful beaches of Viña del Mar are eternal. And let us assume that Francisco is eternal. And let us assume Francisco is always standing on the beaches of Viña del Mar, I hope that on the sandy beaches, and he's producing a footprint in the beach. So the eternal Francisco and the eternal beach, his eternal foot and his eternal footprint. The footprint is caused by your foot. The footprint depends upon your foot, even if the footprint is eternal and even if your foot is eternal. So cause and effect are a relationship of dependency, not necessarily temporal. Not necessarily, but if we think, as Stephen Hawking does, that cause and effect are temporal events, then we have problems. But that's a mistake. That's a limited notion of cause and effect. So just think of yourself forever on the beaches of Viña del Mar. Now you might want to have a companion with you for eternity.
Una última pregunta.
Cristian Sotomayor de la Facultad de Teología. Thank you for your lecture. This is more practical concern than a theoretical concern. You have underlined misunderstandings that come from the very vocabulary that make it very difficult to clear the points. But our universities are increasingly technified in the sense that one area is developed by one faculty and another area by a different faculty. And it's rare to find this occasion where you can discuss the thing in the university sense of the Middle Ages. Do you think there is any way out of this problem?
Well, in an age of increasing specialization, it is difficult. I think that I'd like to cite a famous French philosopher of the last century, Jacques Maritain, who wrote a book, well, many books, but one book in particular called Distinguish in Order to Unite. And I think that Maritain's idea here is that we need all these areas of specialization. But if you only have areas of specialization and nothing more, then you have a kind of aggregate and not a unified knowledge. I mean, the goal of not everyone can be a specialist in every area, of course, but a goal ought to be some kind of integration, or at least showing the methods of integration where you look across disciplines to recognize, for example, that if we ask the question about origins of things, biology asks questions about origins, cosmology asks questions about origins, but hey, anthropology asks questions about origins, sociology asks questions about origins. And if we don't recognize that these various disciplines approach questions of origins in distinct ways, we are likely to get confused and think that cosmology answers the ultimate questions about origins and so forth. Part of a university education ought to include some systematic attempts to cross these disciplinary lines, not by rejecting the disciplinary distinctions, but by recognizing how you bring the distinctions together. Let me give you one small example. Intellectual disciplines are habits of the mind. All knowing is a kind of habit of the mind, and one can possess many different habits. All of us brush our teeth in the morning. We all have a habit of brushing our teeth. Right? I don't think about it. I play tennis. I've given this example last year at this university, as a matter of fact. I play tennis, and I have the habit of hitting a backhand. And I don't think about it. I bend my knees, and I turn my wrist, and so forth. So each of us has many habits of our bodies and many habits of our mind. But just as I have the habit of brushing my teeth and the habit of hitting a backhand, it would be a big mistake to use my tennis racket as a toothbrush. Right? It'd be a big mistake to confuse the habits of hitting a backhand with the habits of brushing one's teeth. It would be a mistake of confusing the habits of mathematical analysis with the habits of biological analysis. Now, the goal for living well is to have all your many habits integrated in a proper way. And not only your bodily habits, so that you don't brush your teeth with your tennis racket, but your intellectual habits as well. And that's a matter of training and discipline and so forth, of learning how, of developing the habits, but then that they're the habits, the intellectual habits of a whole person thinking about what these various insights into the world tell us about the nature of the whole. And that requires professors thinking in these ways and talking to students in these ways, and perhaps in a more systematic way offering courses which seek to do that. So.
Bien, agradecemos por favor un aplauso.
You have my email address. I was in the handout about China. I spoke to a high school audience. I gave a variation of this lecture to 800 high school students in Shanghai a year ago. They all had the text in English. And I had an hour of questions. Who caused the uncaused cause, and so forth. I did not give them my email address, that 800 Chinese. I told them I was speaking to the future of China. But I give my email address here because I have, it's not 800. And you can send me some comments if you like. Also, please note the reference to the webpage of Public Discourse at Princeton, where you have archive of about 25 of my short essays on these kinds of topics. And furthermore, remember, I'm here for another 5.5 or almost 6 weeks. And I would be happy to talk to those who'd like to talk to me. And thank you for your linguistic patience.